Okay guys, welcome back to another After Effects tutorial. Today I'm going to get into some of the options available to you in the transform window, explain a little bit more about keyframing, and explain a little bit more about why we pre-compose and what pre-composing can do. So let's get stuck in. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to stay in this project here, but I'm going to create a new composition. I'm going to call that composition Shield, because I'm going to show you a few things about how to make the shield. I'm going to keep all the settings the same as the last tutorial, and I'm going to click OK. So in order to create the shield, I'm going to use some basic shapes. I'm going to start off with the rectangle tool, like last time, and I'm just going to make sure that the center point is slap bang in the middle, so that if I try and rotate it like this, it will rotate around the center. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to eyeball this in the middle of my screen. Doesn't matter if it's in the dead center or not, because I'm going to be moving it around later on. I'm then going to duplicate it with Command D, and I'm going to make sure that this second one is rotated to 45 degrees like so. So now I'm going to create a circle. I'm going to go up here to where I created the square. I'm going to hold in the corner and select the ellipse tool. I'm then going to press Shift and draw this ellipse like so. Again, I want to make sure that the rotation point for the ellipse is the center, so that when I rotate it, it rotates around itself. So I'm just going to hold Command and double click that there. Now I've got the center of the center of the center. I should be able to line these up like so. I'm just going to eyeball this for now. You can do this mathematically. I'm going to increase the scale of this ever so slightly. You can see I'm using the scale tool here, and then I'm going to move it down like this. Now I could continue to create and duplicate and do all sorts of other things here all day long. So now I'm going to name my layers so I don't get lost. So this was square one. This, I'm just hitting enter on the keyboard, is square two. And this is not square at all. This is my circle. I can double check I've got the right layers by just disabling them in the view window here to make sure I can see what is and what is not affected. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of keyframing. I'm going to start off with this square here, and I'm going to keyframe it across the duration of 10 seconds so that it spins kind of right the way around. Just need to make sure that the center of this is the center of the object, so it is indeed going to spin around itself like this. So what I'm going to do in order to keyframe is I'm going to come down to the transform information. It's worth pointing out what these things do. The anchor point is where the center point of the object sits relative to where it was created. The position, if I just slide this side to side, you can see, or up and down, the position is where does it sit on the screen. It can be incredibly useful to control this mathematically. So I'm going to set this to 960, and I'm going to set this to 540. Why have I used these crazy numbers, you're asking? Well, because this is 1920 pixels across, and 960 is half of that, and it's 1080 pixels high, and 540 is exactly half of that. So this is exactly the center of the screen. I'm just going to go back up into my other square here. I'm going to do the same thing, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing with my circle. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to focus just on the rotation. So the opacity would control how see-through it is, how opaque or transparent it is, and the scale would of course control how big or small it is, and you can keyframe any of this information. I'm just going to work today with rotation. So if I come down to the rotation tool here and I click this little stopwatch, this will allow me to set keyframes. You just click it once. If you want to set additional keyframes, you use this tool over here. Keyframes store the information for whatever line they're on, in this case rotation, of exactly what the rotation settings are wherever the keyframe is. So here the settings are 0. I'm going to say that after 10 seconds, go all the way across to 10 seconds and set another keyframe. You'll notice another little dot appears on the timeline down here. After 10 seconds, this should have rotated by exactly 180 degrees. It should have gone right the way through a half revolution like so. Now I'm going to go to my second square. I'm going to keyframe some rotation on this, but I'm going to keyframe it at a different rate. So this is already starting off at 45 degrees here. That's worth remembering. I'm going to take it to 10 keyframes, but instead of it going to 225, which is 45 plus 180, I'm going to take it to 320. Click a little keyframe there. Take it to 320. What this means is these two are rotating at slightly different speeds, which creates this kind of slightly organic effect as it goes forwards. The final thing I'm going to do, if I go to my circle, is I'm going to keyframe, and I know I said I was only going to work with rotation, but I'm going to keyframe a scale, just so you can see what this does. So my current scale is 104, that's what I set it at when I created it, that's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, at the first point, 0, it's 104. At the end point, 10, it's also 104. But then if I come slap bang in the middle, it's going to pulsate a little bit. I'm going to set a little keyframe there, and I'm just going to take it down to maybe 94. And see what that looks like. So over the course of the effect, that pulses down, they rotate round, and that pulses up like that. All of this stuff is individually keyframed, and if I keep the elements like this, I can go back in and I can change absolutely anything. I can change all of these settings. I can change its rotation, not that you'd see with a circle. I can change its position, you most definitely would see. I can change anything, and I can just do it with a simple keyframe. It's quite a useful technique to have a start point and an end point that's the same, but it does something different in the middle. Now, let's say I want to put this as a shield on my arm that I'm going to need to move around the screen. In order to do that, it would be really useful if all of these things weren't separate objects, because who knows, I might want to go into effects and put some fractal noise on there, for example. And if I have to put that on one, you can see it makes it fatigued like that. If I have to put it on each individual element of my composition, that's going to take me forever. So if I hold Shift and select the top and bottom sections of my composition, and then I go to Layer, Pre-Compose, what it does, and I'll just call this Shield 1. I think I misspelled that. I have. It's going to be Shield 1. What it does is it merges all this stuff down into one layer, but it still retains all of the information that it had before. If I wanted to, I could just double click it, and I could go back in to the composition and change the individual settings here, which is incredibly powerful and useful, because whatever I do in here then automatically comes back through into this pre-composition here. So it's not exactly like merging layers in Photoshop, where once you've done it you can't really undo it. In After Effects you can, just by double clicking it. It will load up the compositions before, and you can go back in and tweak whatever you need. Finally, of course, one of the other advantages of pre-composing is that if I do add this fractal noise now to this object here, it affects the whole object at once, and I haven't got to go in and do each individual bit. The settings for the fractal noise are something that I'll get into in the next tutorial, but they are up here in the effect controls, and you can see the various different things that you can do. This has been another After Effects tutorial from OctoBeard Media. Thank you very much for watching.